ready. Sorry, I'm just putting something away. You go
No,
ahead,
you're
start.
fine. Yep. So, full disclosure, I fucked up. I'm just gonna be honest. I fucked up. I spelled his name wrong. I completely fucked up. Just full disclosure, I fucked up. It is Salvatore Pais. So there is a T, not a D, and it's Pias, not easy. So that was my bad. I fucked up. So, anyways, who is he? Who is this person, and why is his name specifically interesting? Well, to just give a brief background, because I know Xenox wants to fully go into it more. Um, he is somebody who I wouldn't necessarily say is a Nikola Tesla of our time, but I would like to coin the idea that he is somebody of that variety, but still he's very fourth density, whereas Nikola Tesla, I would say, would teeter between fourth and then fifth density. So he's very in the space age type of mindset, and he's very, very humble, very beautiful about it. And it's kind of refreshing to see somebody so embedded inside of, really the darker side of the government, just be so happy about everything and be excited and just be carefree, and not really allow the fact that it's hidden from us, it exists, there's an entire government system inside this, or inside our solar system, outside our solar system, outside our galaxy, everywhere. He probably is privy to some knowledge that he cannot explain, otherwise he's dead. But it's amazing to see how he's so happy about it. And this is a picture of him. Xenox, would you like to bounce off of that?
Yeah. So, if we're just gonna do a quick Wikipedia search on him, Salvatore Cesar Paez. He is an American aerospace engineer and inventor, and he used to work for the Naval Air Station at Patuxent River. Um, he is an American physicist and aerospace engineer. And fun fact, within the past couple of years, he actually just switched. He got a new job at the United States Space Force. So sit on that for a second. He is known for mostly for his work in the military and energy producing applications. But he has gotten a lot of, how do we say, um, I guess people doubt him. They kind of gossip about him. How do you say that, Scuba? For the lack of a better word, they're just talking shit about him. I can't speak English right now, but for those of you that understand, they're talking shit about him, right?
I would
And
I would say maybe slander to a degree.
yeah, they're slandering him. There you go. I'm sorry. um, and so a lot of people say that the feasibility of the patents is doubted. That, oh, it's misinformation to mislead foreign nations about what the American government is developing, blah blah blah. But that is not true at all. It's really far from the truth. And if you've listened to anything that he said in any of his interviews, he explains very deeply, both passively and overtly, why that's not true. One, simply speaking, is that he's put in a lot of work and energy into these patents using real ideas and science and technology that already exists out there, using mathematics and old physics. The physics, believe it or not, that are in these patents have been around for decades, since the 80s and probably even before. In fact, the patent even references an old Japanese experiment for anti-gravity from in 1985, which was done in a lab successfully, um, on a smaller scale. But I digress. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, if you listen to him speak passively when he speaks in the interviews, um, there's a lot of secrecy. He can't. One of the things he can't admit to, he can't say is he can't say whether the government has or has not developed these craft. He cannot say yes, we have them. That is one thing that anytime anyone asks him, he dances around it. He can't get into certain technologies that people ask about. Um, anytime you ask him a question, um, that let's say the patent is already in application, meaning there some function of that patent is existing right now. He can't get into that because of his NDAs that he signed for the U.S. government, because that is considered secret information. But um, Scuba, before I go on anymore, did you want to say anything? No, no. Okay. All right. So let's see, where am I going with this? Anyway, was there anything you wanted to add? What's on the next?
No, keep it. Oh, all right.
I had a
Next
bit of a
point is
brain
how
fart.
many? Huh?
I just hit a brain fart.
No, you're
But go
fine.
ahead.
How many patents has been released? How many had to do with 0 point energy and anti-gravitic craft? Mouthful. Sorry.
You want to take that one, or am I taking it?
Go for it, bro.
All right, all right, all right. Let me pull this up. Oh, those for you that are in the chat, I put in the anti-gravity patent, yeah, the link in there, so you guys can click on it, check it out yourselves. I'll also be including it in the link to the video. But he has, I believe, five, one, two, three, four, five. Okay, now six patents at the time of his interview. I believe it was five, so I think one of these is new. Um, but anyway, right now, as of now, he has six patents. Each one of them, notably, would change um society, the whole world as we know it,
Overnight.
overnight. Yeah. Um, but let's see. How many patents he released? How many had to do with 0 point energy? Okay, so some of them are directly related, some of them are partially related, some of them aren't related at all. Um, I believe the piezoelectric superconductor, which they call a high temperature. Oh yeah, fun fact. So he labeled it the high temperature superconductor, but that was just a name that they did to try and get it through different patent offices and archives because no one was accepting their work. Um, and so actually, it's actually not high temperature at all. It's actually a cold. I mean, it can withstand high temperatures, but it's supposed to be a conductor that's not hot, if that makes any sense. It's essentially a
Room temperature.
room. Yeah. So he has laser augmented turbojet system, which I don't know a whole lot about that one. Plasma compression fusion device. That one we're getting really deep into. We'll do a whole nother session on that one. That one is essentially fusion mastered. And it would solve the energy crisis of the world. Uh, it is related to 0 point energy in the fact that it would be the closest thing that we would have as a society in today's technology to zero point energy, but by a purist standpoint, it technically isn't zero point energy because the energy is not infinite, even though it would be virtually impossible for us to use all of the energy because you're talking about all of the hydrogen and water that's in the world and the amount of energy that it's friggin' this thing's hot, like hotter than the sun, like thousands of times hotter than the sun. So it would be uh virtually impossible for us to use it all. So it's close to infinite, to say the least. Then the next one you have the craft, which is what we're getting into today. Then we have the electric field generator that generates an electromagnetic field, and that is directly related to that craft and other patents because that is the technology that is used fundamentally to create an effect that really uh, puts it
Isn't
all
that
together.
isn't that the propulsion?
Um, it can be used to control, to focus the thing that creates the propulsion. So,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
but think of that thing. Okay, this is how I explain it in layman terms. So you have the thing. Let me see the acronym he used in the patent. The HEEMEG drive, which is the high energy electromagnetic field generator, that has a huge function in the craft. Without that, it wouldn't work at all. Um,
So the
and
HEMEG,
is it was that?
the HEMEG.
Yeah, that thing. So you can think of your car, right? Imagine you didn't have a battery in your car. It would not turn on. That's essentially an analogy for what that is in the craft. That is the thing that's gonna turn on the everything that contains for instance, in the fusion reactor, it contains the plasma. In the craft, it controls the field that reacts with the gases that generate the field of inertia that creates the anti-gravity effect and controls the plasma, which we'll get into when I read all the data points that you can focus that plasma into a form of propulsion. So it's kind of like the computer and the battery of your car into one almost.
What is Salvatore's most
Ooh.
well-known patent, and why
Wait,
is
we
this important?
before we get onto that, there's one more patent, and he actually created a patent for a whole separate high frequency gravitational wave generator. So excluding the craft and its function, he just has a gravitational wave generator, like casually sitting there. I thought that was funny. You go ahead.
I said, what is Salvatore's most well-known patent, and why is this important?
What do you guys think? I'm getting tired talking.
Oh, I mean, I would say that it would be the anti-gravitic craft, not necessarily, or you know, the wave generator, one of the two, basically outlining how it came to be. Because when that first dropped, it went everywhere for a hot second, and then it disappeared real quick. That generator was absolutely everywhere. At least for me, it was. Now, I don't know if that was just because my algorithm was focused on that at the time, because I've always been interested in this stuff. So, my Google and searching algorithms always pop up stuff when it comes to that. So I don't know if it was just because it was all centered around, you know, the way my algorithm search engine likes to feed me stuff.
Yeah,
But
no. Totally right. Actually, I had the same experience. Jordan Sather was one of the few people that I saw covered it. But, just as long as that fad lasted, he did like one or two videos on it. and then everyone else stopped talking about it. And it's like, I think part of the reason was because the concepts are really hard for any like a normal person to understand. So that's why we've translated this the best way we can into layman's terms. But another reason is there is a lot of disinformation on the patents, and what I mean by that is the disinformation campaign, the psychological operation that was put into place, uh, was to essentially say, hey, these are fake. These patents are a psyop developed by the U.S. government to trick foreign nations into thinking we have powerful stuff. But I don't think they need to go to that length to do that. Um, Regardless, there was one point I wanted to make, and it's totally slipped my mind now. There's so many things coming to me.
Take your time, bud.
I remember now. So one thing that Salvatore Pais said, um, he said essentially everything that you need to create these devices is in the patents. But one thing he did mention is he took out some parts of the concepts that would or could be used for harm. He also did say there was one point that he took out, um, and that he hinted to in one of the interviews that we'll also link in the chat and on the video. He did an interview with the guy on YouTube known as Theories of Everything, and in that interview, right around there's a section called "It Hurts to Be a Charlatan," or called a charlatan, right? Because that's when he was talking about all that kind of stuff. It was either right there or before that part, and that is at like the hour and a half mark. And he was talking about bad people. You know, why did he release the patents like this? He has all the scrutiny he's gone through. Um, before he even tried to get into patents, he actually went to a bunch of private organizations. He tried to send it, putting it in archives, universities, magazines. He tried to put it in like everywhere. No one wanted anything to do with any of it, and people were just name calling him, acting like high schoolers. Like they're being very immature about it. They're like, "Oh, you're a hack. You're this and that." Um, and no one would accept it. They're like, this guy's like, yeah, but I am an engineer. I work for the government. I have this degree, XYZ. And they're just like, yeah, we don't care. That means nothing to us. And they wanted him to get like a bunch of different scientists or professors to sign off on it. And people that he knew that I guess you could say, sort of confided in, that he felt he could trust at least enough. Uh, he went to them. He's like, "Hey, can you just sign off on this? Put your name on this, saying that this has some credibility," and no one would do it. And that gives rise to a couple points. Is one point is the sheer amount of psychological condition that we have in society, right? That again, I want to reiterate, these concepts, at least in the physics world, are not new. This is using science that we've already developed, again, that's already been developed in the 80s. It's just a new way of looking at things. He's using Einstein's theory of relativity. He's using particle theory, Planck's, all that kind of stuff. For those of you that are into physics and quantum science and stuff, he's not using like the latest updated kind of stuff. It's just a new way of looking at the old stuff. And no one wanted anything to do with it. And so he went to the only way. He had a buddy in the naval office, from the Navy or somewhere in the government, I forget where. And he worked really hard, and the guy ended up being like a genuine person, like a real down to earth person. And so basically, Paez had to describe, you know, the fundamentals of how he came up with this. That he basically broke down the mathematical proofs and the science, you know, from an elementary perspective, proving his concepts to the guy in this office, right? Um, and the guy was like, "Dude, yeah, okay, I think you're totally right." And so he took these patents and he submitted them to the U.S. government and through the U.S. Navy. And there's two reasons, or maybe three, uh, that he did that. One, way everyone could have access to these patents and develop them on their own. You know, they wouldn't get buried by a government organization. Two, if you went to a corporate organization and they were the ones to develop this, this also has to do with why he sent it to the Navy, right? So he said, if I gave this to the Navy and they developed it, or developed it, because right, he can't say that they have, but this is where he kind of slipped up in his speaking. But he was like, if they have developed it, right? Um, and then let's say a private corporation uses these patents that are publicly available now and develops it. Let's say, I don't know, Amazon develops it, right? Well, guess what? Now Amazon can charge whatever the fuck they want for this now trillions and trillions of dollar craft, right? When it only took 500,000 or $2 million to develop, right? And the craft itself is probably a lot cheaper than that. Uh, so where I'm going with this is that he made it so that this technology can't be monopolized because the fact that the U.S. government has rights to it, has developed it, quote unquote, so to speak. Um, they can't charge an arm and a leg because there is a form of competition. And it's not just buried, hidden, or controlled. um, yeah. So that is that.
So, what are we looking at here?
Oh, okay. So I don't know because the descriptions on the patent are really complex, and it doesn't really tell you what the diagram is. It just tells you what these very plain looking numbers are. You know, it has a number pointing to this, and obviously that looks like a box with another box, and it's really rough. So, but just to give you a general idea, um, you have obviously you can see you see the wavy lines. That's the field, electromagnetic inertia reducing field around the craft, right? And then before I get too detailed, pull up my laptop. But inside of that, you have the craft, right? So on the top part, obviously that is the rectangular craft, some semblance of a TR3B or something like that. Although others speculate that's a separate patent because is another similar patent to this. But we might have to do a whole nother episode on that because it's really intriguing. But on the bottom, I'm like, okay, what is that? A diamond? Obviously, there's no diamond craft, but that's the underside, I believe, of the craft. I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong, but I think that's each side, right? So the top part is just, you know, looking at it two-dimensionally, and then the bottom part is the third-dimensional perspective, but on a 2D plane, right?
I'd say it's
On
a
a piece
cross
of paper.
section.
Yeah. What'd you say, Scoob?
I'd say it's a cross section,
What do you mean?
cut in half.
Yeah, yeah. That's essentially what I was saying. Let me pull up this patent real quick. Wait, go back one more time before we get to that. I want to see if I can explain this a little more in depth real quick. All right, so let me see. Let me search 155. All right, so apparently you see what looks like the hull or like the shell of the craft. Apparently there's hollow ducts inside essentially what is the shell of the craft with gas, and that's what and there's complex geometric shapes going throughout these shafts, right? And there's a bunch of science that goes into it, but essentially it excites this gas with electromagnetic uh, field or radiation, and that creates a field um, from the plasma. But we're gonna get more into that. We did a whole bunch of translation, and then 55, that little thing you see in the center, that is. See, that is. See, if this is the right pattern. Yeah, 55. It says that is the crew compartment and power plant system. And then 57 is cargo bay. All right, what is 56? Oh, same thing essentially. Okay, that's all connected. Okay, so the people that are in the middle there are guarded by a Faraday cage to protect against all the EM radiation effects, which I want to get into because there are eyewitness accounts, or I guess you could say like stories from people who have had alien encounters or have walked up to crafts were either in the military or just on their own that have had an encounter. And they said sometimes when you get close to these crafts, sometimes people die. Like they literally, their brains get fried. Um, they have brain damage. Their body gets radiation poisoning. And the Faraday cage is an important important point because there is gamma ray radiation being emitted from this craft. Now it's contained, but obviously, if you get too close, you get within that electromagnetic field, it can be very dangerous. And so that might have been what happened. Thought that was an interesting point, but you can go ahead on to the next one, Scoobs.
No,
If
that's
you,
also a very, interesting point that we've touched on here in Mystery School, and I think Junk can very well attest to this, that, the very big contrast between UFO alien abductions that are of, benevolence versus UFO abductions that are trying to probe you, quote unquote. Because most of the stories or abduction accounts that I have, studied myself, if they have been of, love and light, they have a loving feeling, they have a euphoric feeling, not a feeling of electromagnetism, pretty much. Junk, would you agree? If he's there, probably not. Oh well. What are we looking at here, Matt? Or Xenox, sorry.
we're not going to get too detailed into that, but I can touch upon it. That is the separate patent. This is not the craft, or I don't think it even. Let me see if it has to do directly with the craft. Um,
Hey, Scuba, I'm sorry. I was in the bathroom. I just said
Oh,
I heard. What's
no,
going on?
you're good. He was talking about how some of these manufactured crafts, if you get too close to them, you can feel effects that you wouldn't feel if you were touching a craft of love and light or of something that was of, higher density. You wouldn't your brain wouldn't explode. You wouldn't have the fear of dying. You could interact with it in a way that you can't with something that's manufactured here on Earth and used with a purpose of malevolence versus benevolence.
Well, I don't think you can necessarily say that this is a malevolent craft, but I think it's just a level of technology that uses electromagnetism and gamma radiation, which can be very harmful to the human body. Um, and so what I was saying is if you get too close to the craft that uses this technology, you can get brain damage, you could die, you can get radiation poisoning, you get very sick. And that's because I was referencing the Faraday cage inside of the craft. But you go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm gonna say this is the contrast between a craft that is fully interfacing with consciousness versus that which is reverse engineering metallics and different kind of tangible metals. I mean, because these things are built organically. So when we look at these other ones, the ones where the kid in the scrapyard is trying to create a car out of junk metal, it's just kind of what you get, and there is a danger associated with it. But I do believe it's kind of like everything that you're talking about, Xenox. It's something that can be refined into safety. I think right now we just have the spark plugs and we're like hitting them back and forth, and we're seeing a little bit of danger, but still for all the right reasons. I mean, innovation is dangerous.
I mean, you made a very good point. Imagine this is probably the most basic level of this technology, and like I said before, this is stuff that's been developed in the 80s already. So just imagine what we are experimenting with now, with the stuff that we will not release, right? It's gonna be eons beyond this, and this is technology that they've given to the public. Which this is what I forgot to mention earlier. The whole reason Salvatore released these patents in the first place was because he wanted to say, "Hey, people, humanity, America, this is how you build this. Do it. This change the world, so to speak." And but it's not that we don't have the technology or the scientific understanding of how to build this. We just don't have the interest. No one wants to do it. No one believes in it. No one has the psychological conditioning to take off the blindfolds and say, "Hey, let's invest a little bit of time and money into this." Because if a university or company, like I said, was truly invested in developing this, they could totally create a craft. They could totally create a real fusion device that would change the world today. But it's just a matter of perspective. It's not that we don't have the brilliant minds out there. It's just that our minds are not open enough. And that reflects in the critique of Salvatore himself.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, but I digress. This is the gravitational wave generator and the diagram that we see here. And Scooby, you want to point out to a part? I'll just touch upon what that might be.
Yep. So what's 500?
Let's see.
It's got the electric spark.
That is the electrical power source that powers the generator. So it just says electrical source. I don't think you need anything fancy for this.
So what would be 800 and 700?
800. That is the electrical motor and power plant to counter the spin of the vibration resonant gas-filled cavities, which you'll hear this in almost every single one of his patents is gas-filled cavities. And this is what he coins the term as the Pais effect. And it has to do with matter changing from one form of another, from, let's say, gas. I don't know the exact order, right? But there's a scientific phenomenon that happens when you change states of matter rapidly, right? When you go from a solid to a gas really quickly. But something interesting happens, Pius says, when you go from, let's say, liquid or gas to plasma very quickly. And he talks about the spin and acoustic vibration. So when you electro power this gas with the electromagnetics, and then you also incorporate spin and acoustic vibration, it amplifies the effects of this phenomenon. But that is essentially the motor that counteracts the spin generated from that effect is 800. But like I said, this is not the patent we're getting into today. This is just a little something something uh to touch upon. What was the other one you said, Scoob?
Hmm?
You said 800 and what?
700.
Oh, okay.
But we don't need to go too depth into that. We should move
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
So what important data points within the documents are useful for our understanding of these crafts?
Oh man. All right, let me pull up this text document you saved for me. Or wait, did you save any of the stuff that I made
Yeah.
earlier? You did?
Not any stuff that you sent today. You didn't send anything today.
No, never mind. I'll just read it from here. Okay. All right, guys. Buckle up, because now we're getting into the juicy stuff, the little nerdy science stuff. Some of it might be over your head, some of it might be perfectly fine. Um, but yeah, just bear with us. So I'm gonna go ahead and read verbatim for a couple paragraphs from the patent. All right, give me one sec. Pull it up. Okay. Um, all right, in the patent, when you pull it up, uh, it has a bunch of different sections. It has a claim, right? So it says, what is the claim? What is this patent? And that's essentially saying it's a craft using an inertial mass reduction device. Um, and it comprises of a few parts. That's an inner resonant cavity wall, which we kind of mentioned earlier, outer resonant cavity wall, microwave emitters that create the high frequency electromagnetic waves, um, and the vibration and all that kind of stuff. And important part in this patent is a polarized vacuum, which we'll get into later, um, as I go on to the data points. But starting with the description, it says the invention described herein may be manufactured and used by or for the U.S. government of the United States of America for governmental purposes without payment or of any royalties thereon or therefore. um, Background, right? Okay, so there are four known fundamental forces which control matter, therefore control energy. These forces are known as strong nuclear forces, weak nuclear forces, electromagnetic forces, and gravitational force. In the hierarchy of the forces, electromagnetism is perfectly positioned to be able to manipulate all three of the other forces. Stationary electrical charges give rise to electrostatic field, which, while moving, generates both electric and magnetic fields. And so that's why electromagnetism kind of go hand in hand. Additionally, accelerating the charge through electromagnetic radiation in the form of what they call traverse waves or light, uh, mathematically, physically, uh, essentially the field intensity can be represented um, in the field strength and the magnetic field. So I'm not really sure what that says there, but the fields act as carriers for both energy and momentum, thus interacting with physical entities at the most fundamental level. So what that was describing, I guess, is how you can use electromagnetism to harness nuclear energies, and gravitational energies. And it kind of just summarized very briefly of a little bit of the techniques how they did in that paragraph there. But going on to the craft now, um, we're going to get into the brains. The artificially generated high electromagnetic field, such as those generated in the the HEMEG drive, as Scuba said, the high energy electromagnetic field generator. Um, they interact with the vacuum energy state. In the vacuum energy state, what that is, it can be described as an aggregate or collective state comprised of what they call superposition or the quantum field, right? So this electromagnetic generator interacts with the vacuum state, which is essentially the quantum field fluctuating and which permeates through our entire reality and fabric of space-time. And that's where you kind of get into 0 point energy, the quantum woo-woo stuff. But this is still like very, very basic. Like if you took your quantum physics 101 in college, you would already understand this, right? So this is, again, this is not new science. But I'm moving on. Um, all right. So, oh, yeah. So it's the fabric that permeates through everything, right? The high energy interaction with the vacuum state or the state of the quantum field gives rise to physical phenomenon such as force fields or matter field force and matter field unification, as they call it. According to quantum field theory, this is a strong interaction between fields, and this is based on the mechanism of transfer of vibrational energy between the fields. The transfer of vibrational energy further induces local fluctuations in adjacent quantum fields, which permeate space-time. Um, and they may or may not be electromagnetic. The matter, energy, and space-time are all emergent constructs which arise out of the fundamental framework of the vacuum state. I did not translate that one. Um, I guess because it was kind of just describing the concepts of what this craft is about. Um, so these are a lot of like, again, if you don't know a word, you can go into the patent, copy paste on Google, look that up. Those are basic physics and quantum ideals. And so number 4, everything that surrounds us, ourselves and included, can be described as macroscopic collections of fluctuations in vibrations and oscillations in the quantum mechanical field, right? And I want to make note to a lot of you, having studied quantum physics myself just for fun, on TV and in books a little bit. Um, I don't know if you know, or if you remember from your science class in 3rd grade or 7th grade, right? Matter, but they show you like the little particles, right? It shows like for a solid, it shows like a block of particles, right? And then it shows like the water molecules are kind of like floating, they're moving, and then the air molecules looks like they're all bouncing around the place. Well, believe it or not, those solid particles in that block, Scuba, do you remember your science class? What I'm talking about? Like the atoms, like you remember the atoms, or shows
We
you,
did it differently though.
huh?
We did it differently. We had like 3D graphics talking about atoms and whatnot.
Yeah, but it shows you like oh, this is like a bunch of atoms as a solid, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you know what I'm talking about. All right, so though that solid block of atoms or particles or whatever, even though it appears they're not moving, they're actually moving. They're vibrating, actually. So no matter any kind of a solid anything is actually moving, right? It's vibrating, and so that kind of correlates with the quantum physics world once you get into that. And I'm going to reread this sentence again now that you have that. Everything that surrounds us, ourselves included, can be described as macroscopic collections of fluctuations and vibrations and oscillations in quantum mechanical fields, right? And so, uh, and now that we're getting to the quantum mechanics part of it, I guess it's also saying that we're creating those oscillations and fluctuations inside of the uh, quantum field. Um, and matter is confined. Matter is essentially confined energy, which we know as I think there's a famous quote by Einstein where it says concerning matter and energy. Crap, I gotta pull that up. Uh, let's see. That might be. I know it's on my Instagram. Let me pull that up.
I just want to say thank you for bearing with us, guys. This is still very hard stuff to go through and very in depth to explain. So thank you very much for holding tight with us.
I'm pulling it up. Sorry for the wait. I have it here. Okay, quote by Albert Einstein. Concerning matter, we have been all wrong. What we have called matter is actually energy, whose vibration has been so lowered as to be perceptible by the senses. There is no matter. End quote by Albert Einstein. Which is pretty crazy for his time, you know. That's almost spiritual. I mean, that's something Salvatore Pais says is that in today's society, philosophy has been disconnected from physics when they go hand in hand. But anyway, I continue on with number 4. Matter is confined, energy bound within fields, frozen in the quantum of time. All right. Now you're kind of connecting the dots there. Therefore, under certain conditions, coupling of hyperfrequency, axial spin, blah 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 blah. Bunch of science words there. The rules and special effects of quantum field behavior also apply to the macroscopic physical entities. And it's essentially fancy for saying you can use the physical space to tap into the quantum field. So that's kind of getting to 0 point energy. But I think as for this craft, it doesn't really get into energy generation a whole lot, but more so a means of propulsion. Um, let's see. All right, now I can start translating it for you guys. Let me go to gotta go back up. All right. So the quantum vacuum plasma, or QVP, is the electric glue of our plasma universe, or quantum universe, right? The Casimir effect, the Lamb shift, and spontaneous emission are specific confirmations of the existence of QVP. And I don't really know what those are. You can look them up, but those are examples of uh, already known physics that are out there that prove uh, that plasma is in existence. So it's already known this exists, right? Um, okay, so electromagnetic fields are strongest the more potent the interactions are with the plasma field. Therefore, the higher induced energy of the particles which spring into existence. And I think, yeah, I translated it here for you guys. Putting electron energy into the quantum particles that are all around us result in an interaction and augmentation of the electromagnetic field generated around the craft. And so what I was trying to say was when you put that electron energy into that vacuum plasma field that's around the craft. It results in that the field to be generated and makes it even stronger. Um, and it creates that vacuum effect. So this inertial, so he coins it inertial reduction because what they're doing is they're using a quantum vacuum, literally sucking in. So it's you're taking like a void within a vacuum and accessing that quantum field to create a vacuum, which then creates a reduction in mass or inertia. So it's essentially counteracting gravity. It's anti-gravitic, right? Um, and it says additionally, because of the amplification effect, it can be used as a power source. So this another weird thing about this patent is it like casually touches upon 0 point energy, like it doesn't matter, uh, which is really interesting. Um, but I think it's because it's not the point of this patent. It's not about energy generation from the quantum field. It's about inertial reduction and essentially attaining a craft that can travel fast or faster than the speed of light. Essentially, uh, in a small scale that I had. All right, so number 8. Uh, that was way too complex to read at any point, so I translated it. It said the quantum field fluctuations from the generator create a vacuum around the craft, resulting in negative pressure. Yeah, and that's what I was trying to say. That negative pressure creates the inertial reduction. All right, number 9. It says the conservation of local space into the quantum plasma inside the vacuum affects the electrons, which results in, quote, the topological lattice energy density. As a result, extreme speeds can be achieved. Now, Scoop, do you have that photo that I sent you, the 2 screenshots of like the
Let's
space
see.
thing? Can you pull those up?
Um,
I sent them to you on Discord.
mm,
I should have.
the direct C.
The superluminal thing, the Wikipedia and the Google thing.
Uh, oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So some of you might be like, "What the heck? What is this? Why is this relevant to the craft?" And it kind of is, and it kind of isn't. But he threw that term out there, and I'm like, What the heck? What is uh topical lattice energy? What is superluminal motion, right? And I think actually he gets into superluminal on a different point. But one thing I wanted to touch upon is that there are objects or phenomenon in space that can already travel faster than the speed of light, and that has to do with black holes. Let's see, bursts of jets from blazars, quasars, radio galaxies, blah 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 blah. And an interesting thing is that all of these, uh, I guess, phenomenon have to do with a similar effect in the universe, is that they affect gravity in some sort of way, using high electromagnetic radiation, like the radio galaxies, or just a fuck ton of energy, like the quasars and black holes, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so I guess it's that once you start affecting gravity in a way that, in a sense, allows you to travel faster than the speed of light. So moving on, essentially what I was talking about, the polarization of the local vacuum uh, created a convenient type of extreme dense energy which can be used as a form of propulsion, polarizing the field around it by using the electrons. And essentially, imagine focusing that energy, those electrons, onto a single point around the field, and that is what can create the propulsion. Kind of like you know what? You ever heard of those like ion energy engines, Scoob? You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's essentially focusing the energy like that onto a point within the field, and that creates propulsion.
For those of you who
Uh,
don't know, an ion engine it uses full electricity as a form of propulsion in space. It is a very light form of propulsion. It can basically be uh, summarized with the same equal energy in space as like a fire extinguisher. Very, very small bursts of energy.
yeah. Well, I don't know if you can call this a fire extinguisher,
Well,
but
not what we're
I
talking
know.
about, but
I'm just
most
saying that
ion
for joke.
thrusters now.
Yeah. I'm not comparing it to having fun there. But anyway, number 10, the technology can be used to create inertial and gravitational manipulation. Um, I guess pull up the effect the way that humanity uses propulsion and travel, as well as a source of power generation. Um, although the patent seems to limit the idea of energy generation from the quantum field to the craft. Uh, is it the use of zero point energy? I asked that's limited in the application, and asked the question that possibly it requires the craft, the anti-gravity field, or for a sense of movement, interaction with the particles in the quantum field around it. Um, that's how it gets its energy from that zero point thing, because it really doesn't say a whole lot about that second form of energy generation tapping into that quantum field and why you can't use that as a generator. But I think it just has to do with the field around the craft. I think that's why there's no practical application for that type of energy, zero point energy in let's say a generator. I actually think um the fusion patent that he has is a better example of harnessing energy. But I move on. For those of you who care, there's I'm gonna include this in the chat. There's a big um mathematical equation that I have no idea, beyond my comprehension. Unless you're a physicist, you won't know what the hell it is. But it's in the patent too. And the equation essentially describes the maximum intensity achieved by the high energy electromagnetic field generator. Um, and the shape, total electrical charge from the surface area of the generator, the electric permittivity or free space available, uh, or energy available available energy of the space, angle of rotation and frequency and vibration in hertz. Now we're getting into hertz. There's vibration in hertz that's also used in the craft, right? We mentioned that before. So it tells you the specific hertz that it needs to vibrate at, which I thought was really cool. So it's telling you literally what you have to do to create this craft, right? I'm just summarizing everything for you. The translation into speed. So now we're getting the measurements. So this equation is literally like the key to, if you were to look on a little dashboard and you had a lever and you got to control how fast you were going, all of that would be used in the algorithm to tell you, all right, this is how much energy I'm putting in, this is how fast I'm gonna go, right? The translation to speed and the propulsive unit chemical, right? So how much of that gas you would need to introduce into the chamber, how much it needs to vibrate at, how much available energy is in the space around you in the field, etc., etc. Uh, now we get into the that HEEM, the HEMEG drive. We'll just call it that for fun because I'm tired of the acronym. Um, so that is actually, I think, if I read it correctly, is a configuration of disks and angular data, and it it rotates in a, I guess, it tells you how the disk configuration is, but I don't have that written down. But yeah, it has the angular data. That's what I wrote. It just has angular data because that's way too complex. But the speed of it is at over 30,000 RPMs, and that generates the electromagnetic field and the energy flow per unit area, whatever that means. And it does not include the math for the contribution of the quantum plasma. All right, and then it also explains how high the frequency rotation of the disk engine, if combined with the vibration, right? So now it's combining the rotation, and now we're throwing vibrations into the mix. And that is used to create high energy generation, machinery power, with output levels much higher than anything that we have available now. So it's using like I guess a generator that we already conceptually have. It's combining those RPMs with vibration, and so that vibration, when combined with the RPMs, maximizes and amplifies the energy output. And this is like, um, oh, here's this is pretty cool. So even though these numbers might mean nothing to you, if you've taken like algebra or heck even yeah, I think you need at least like, if you remember like 1% from your math class, you'll know what this is. It's on your calculator, right? So let's say I'm gonna throw out some numbers here, but these are what's actually written down. Um, from the wattage, it takes from 10 to the ninth uh to 10 to the 18th hertz, um, and then that amplifies that into 10 to the 24th power, um, to the 10 to the 28th in watts and beyond. So that's pretty crazy. If you type that in, let me type it on the calculator. 10 to the power. Where's my power sign? There you go. No, we don't want a 2. We're going to do 28. Good lord. So that's, I don't even know what number that is. 1000000 E plus 28. So, yeah, too big for the calculator. That's what we'll say. Uh, Not enough zeros to fit on your screen. Let's see. All right, so the next equation tells us it's the math that's necessary for the charged electrical system to use for its controls in calculating the amount of acceleration from the anti-gravity device when the rotating and vibrating engine creates the field. Oh, what happened? It loaded. God damn it. Where was I? Sorry, it moved.
So while he's looking for that, I'm going to ask and answer the question that is on the screen. Would it be difficult for the average Joe to know how to replicate something similar? Yes, it absolutely would be. This would require a team of engineers, scientists. Also, it would require a team of scientists, engineers. It wouldn't cost as much as you would think, but it would definitely require a group of people who would be absolutely dedicated to the mission, the idea, and fully involved in a way that you're not gonna try and benefit people hardcore, because at the end of the day, as Xenox said, the U.S. military owns and controls the patents. So if you do anything that's, malicious in intent, the government will come after you. And that being said, you have to be an organization and a company that's, its main focus is for the betterment of humanity and isn't trying to destroy you in any way, shape, or form. Continue, Xenox.
Yeah.
I know you have more data points to get
So
to.
I was saying the next equation. Yeah, blah blah blah. Calculates control of acceleration from the engine. Uh, Also the polarization, which causes the acceleration in the force field. Um, and the amount of acceleration. Yeah. Okay. So the next one explains the microwave frequency. So this is when if for those of you that like sound or vibration, this is 10 to the 11th power of hertz. Um, Applied to the surface area. Uh, Here's some more math. Uh, to an energy output of something like fucking, I don't even know what this number is, 10 to the 33rd power watts divided by m squared, um, which is an insane number to me. I don't even know what that is. Not including the numbers from all the other energy obtained from the 0 point energy field. All right. Uh, and the next point says essentially it highlights the random fluctuation of the quantum vacuum particles or plasma. That would literally physically block the craft from moving. Uh, so I guess like essentially imagine this plasma exists all around us, and when you excite it, it's kind of fluctuating and popping, right? All throughout. Like you think of like a flame, right? So you see the flames at the top of the flame, they're kind of just popping in and out of reality, right? Imagine that's happening all around you with the quantum plasma, right? And so that would actually physically block the craft from moving or doing anything, right? But it's the HEMIG engine that is able to manifest the force field and polarize these particles and concentrate it in a way that they call pair of particles with antiparticles. So I guess it's pairing. Now this part is a little more I guess maybe it is old science, but they don't teach it in schools. So they're pairing it with particles and antiparticles, which I don't really understand what that is. Um, and then the next part explains that there is a need for mass reduction. Um, if you want to travel faster than the speed of light, that's where you got into superluminal speeds. It explains how the stretching space allows for movement across space faster than light. So there's stretching space, which is the field around the craft, um, and capable by the polarized vacuum affecting the space around it, which is the electromagnetic field. And it shows the math behind the field affecting the vacuum energy state, blah, 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 which essentially translates to the equation that determines the rate of speed one has the possibility to travel within the amount of throttle essentially given to the energy affecting that vacuum. And the pairing of electron particles and antiparticles results in some crazy things. Quote, this is what it says in the patent, results in total annihilation yielding gamma rays. So I guess the antiparticle stuff is probably stuff that they use in I guess like the atom bomb or nuclear when you get into nuclear physics. But yeah, quote, results in total annihilation yielding in gamma rays, which occupy the electromagnetic frequency spectrum of 1019 hertz and above. And if any of you know, gamma rays are very harmful for you, which is why we highlighted the Faraday cage that's in the craft earlier. In order to achieve superluminal craft, which is faster than the speed of light, and it just casually throws this term out there. By the way, superluminal. This craft can travel faster than the speed of light. Crazy, right? The craft becomes non-physical, quote, by utilizing some form of mass or inertia reduction, which requires instantaneous removal of mass. So when this generator, when this craft inertia reduction goes into effect, it essentially becomes non-physical because it reduces its mass by affecting the I guess the gravitational field around it. So it has no mass. But it needs to be instantaneous for it to happen. They turn it on. And the paper suggests that there are different methods of achieving this. And that this is mind-blowing too, because it's like, wow, if because the methods that they're explaining in this patent that are being used is electromagnetism, radiation, stuff that we have already that we know about. But it kind of just brushes over using exotic matter, negative mass, negative energy density, bring out this effect may not have been the only alternative to the artificial generation of gravity waves. When you get into exotic matter and all that kind of stuff, that's stuff that you can't really find anywhere else. That's all like theoretical stuff, which they probably have in labs somewhere in the government, but or some corporations or wherever. But I digress. Yep. It says it's moreover feasible to remove energy mass from the system by enabling the vacuum polarization by essentially manipulating the quantum fluctuations within the vacuum. Quote, it is possible to reduce the craft's inertia, that is its resistance motion, to acceleration by polarizing the vacuum in close proximity to the craft. As a result, extreme speeds can be achieved, end quote. The next point explains that the vacuum energy state is, quote, and the vacuum energy state can be thought of as a chaotic system comprised of random, highly energetic fluctuations in the collective quantum fields. We kind of already touched upon that, but it gives three factors that, if applied, can result in the control and manipulation of that vacuum field. All right, so this kind of explains how do you control and manipulate and cause that. And it explains that the HEMFG drive is the engine that achieves this. The acceleration and vibration mode, which results in spin and vibration of the disks, or the harmonic oscillations, which electrically charge the system. So I guess I kind of read that incoherently, but there's three parts to it, which is acceleration and vibration, and the spin of the vibration of the disks in harmony, which charge the system. And that's essentially what manipulates the vacuum energy. Okay. Quote, immediate proximity of the craft surface outside vacuum boundary is achieved, allowing for smooth sailing through negative pressure, repulsive gravity, right? So it's using negative pressure, using the quantum field to suck in, essentially causing a reduction in gravity up to nothingness, apparently. I guess that's what we're going here with. It may be stated that the void sucks in the craft, end quote. So it's literally what it says. It sucks in the craft through the vacuum field of the quantum plasma, from the plasma. Okay, it explains how the fluctuating electrical charge of the surface of the craft can result in the mass reduction of the craft through vibrations. Furthermore, it is possible to enable the Gertzenstein effect, which is namely the production of high-frequency gravitational waves by high-frequency electromagnetic radiation in the matter of modifying gravitational field in close proximity to the craft results in propulsion, end quote, which essentially explains the modification of the field around the craft results in its propulsion, right? So you have the field again, as I was saying, and then you modify that field a little bit and it can result in propulsion. And then I have a notable mention here, explaining that the previous attempts to replicate this in the past, in 1989, failed. Be that they did not replicate the mathematical formula and procedures done by the original experiment. Right, so I guess there was an experiment done in the 1980s or like 1985, like that, um, in a vacuum that did this exact thing. I guess that's like publicly known. And other scientists tried to replicate it, such as in 1989, but they failed because they didn't use the exact mathematical formula and the exact procedures done in the experiment. So they kind of tried to do it in their own way, but they didn't get the results they wanted, which, if you were, and it doesn't make sense to me. If you're for scientists, I thought you would just copy it exactly the same. But anyway, um, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know. All right, the next points, we're almost done. We're 3/4 of the way done. So, uh, it explains. Oh yeah, so the guy's name was Hayasaka et al. The experiment concepts and math behind all of his stuff there that's in the patent as well. It's very similar to everything we talked about, except not using. Except it does use thermodynamics and a gyro rotor, so even more basic kind of stuff. It's just using thermodynamics and a gyro rotor to create a vacuum effect in the quantum field to create mass reduction, essentially. And that's using like stuff that you could probably find in a lab, which is pretty cool when you think about it. Um, and yeah, that's another note. It references superluminal speeds as a casual thing. Blah blah blah. We got that already. Yep. It says exotic materials can have an effect on radiation and gravity, but blah blah blah. Okay, so this present invention is directed to craft using an inertial mass reduction device. The craft includes an inner resonant cavity wall, right? An outer resonant cavity wall, and microwave emitters. The outer resonant cavity wall and the inner resonant cavity wall form a resonant cavity, right? So like a tube, I guess. The microwave emitters create high-frequency electromagnetic waves throughout the resonant cavity. So then it emits electromagnetic waves through a high frequency throughout the cavity, causing the outer resonant cavity walls to vibrate in an accelerated mode, and create a local polarized vacuum outside the resonant cavity wall. And it is a feature of this present invention to provide a craft using an inertial reduction device that can travel at extreme speeds. And now we're getting to the descriptions of the photos in the patent. The microwave emitters is 300, maybe the electromagnetic field generator, as described in the patent. So I guess it gives you the exact patent number for the electromagnetic generator, the EFGM field generator. Oh, okay, filed in 2015. Oh, yeah, so the microwave emitters that are being used in the craft are just microwave emitters that emit radio frequency that you could buy on friggin' Amazon probably. But anyway, um, they're arranged within the resonant cavity wall, and maybe antennas, high frequency radio emitter sources the EM spectrum range of 300 megahertz to 300 gigahertz, and arranged in a way that caused the outer resonant cavity wall to vibrate in an accelerated mode. So it's using those microwave emitters to emit a frequency that creates the wall to vibrate, and that creates an important effect that interacts with the plasma field. Um, it describes the outer shell around the craft. Okay, so it's made of aluminum and copper um, at room temperature and cryogenically cooled by superconducting material, yttrium, barium, copper oxide, and niobium. I don't know what that is, but it's used in the outer resonant cavity wall. And then 43 explains how the craft can be used as a submarine. Now this is cool. Um, it explains how the craft can be used underwater as a submarine to travel through airspace and water, pretty much all fields, right? And they call it it is possible to envision a hybrid aerospace slash undersea craft, or HAUC or whatever. So it's aerospace and undersea craft, which, due to the physical mechanisms enabled by the inertial mass reduction device, can function as a submersible craft of extreme underwater speeds. And this is due because of the lack of water skin friction and the enhanced sheath stealth capabilities from the non-linear scattering of the RF and sonar signals. The hybrid craft would move with great ease through air, space, and water mediums by being enclosed in the vacuum. And because it's essentially, think of it as having a bubble. This is the most elementary way of describing it. There's a bubble around the craft, and because you exist in this bubble, you can travel through water in all mediums with zero friction. Because it's essentially, a bubble is a vacuum, right? This is just a little more high tech of a vacuum. Um, and yeah, that's really cool if you think about it, because there's a lot of stuff out there about UFOs you see in the water, going into the water, under possible underground civilizations, whether ET or manned or have you. What do you think of that, Fug? You're muted.
That's beautiful, and that kind of leads us into the last or
Oh,
second to last question.
I'm almost done here. 2 more points. And
All
then
right.
the next 3 sections describe the force field and how it's shaped and looks around the craft, which I guess is not important, so I left that out. And then 47, the last one, it says that it's a present invention and has described and referred to, but is not limited to the descriptions in the patent, which means that it's only been described to in the most basic sense in the patent, but there's basically more is what they're hinting at, and a lot better probably. And that is the end. Go ahead, Fube.
So why hasn't mainstream science figured out how to create anti-gravitic technology yet? Why haven't they picked it up? Why haven't they, tried to help anybody? Why is there nobody on TikTok doing this?
Well, I kind of touched upon that, but I'll string it all together. One, there have been scientists in the past that have done this in different settings, but it's really difficult for other scientists to replicate it because I guess it's just using uh, not necessarily science, but perspectives that are not, how you say, mainstream in the scientific world, and so it's hard for people to replicate them because they're not open-minded enough. And they might not even be open-minded enough for the idea of its existence. I mean, I'm sure if you bring this idea up to without referencing the patent to some random physicist, he'll call you a hack and crazy, and you don't know what you're talking about, and you should go to school and learn science all over again. Uh, or he'll tell you that we won't achieve this for 1,000 years and that it's impossible. And so it's a matter of conditioning, social conditioning. That's all it is, really, social conditioning. Uh, and lack of awareness, you know, lack of meaning. There's no purpose. There's nothing behind it. There's no campaign behind it. It just is, it kind of exists, right? It's like, what if I told you I mean, this is a thought experiment, so this is not real, obviously. If I told you the cure for cancer was 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C and, let's say, like, I don't know, horseradishes, right? In this thought experiment, that's true, but in reality, it's not, right? But let's say that was it. It's something that you would look at me like I'm crazy, but it's true. And because you think I'm crazy, you would never find the cure for cancer because you don't go ahead and ask the questions. You don't go ahead and experiment and follow the protocol and all that. It's just a matter of social conditioning. But also for the anti-gravity craft, I feel like that's more of a difficult one. You would need a team of engineers, you need money, you need scientists who understand multiple fields of science like electromagnetism. You need welders to weld the craft. You need people who understand gases, who understand coding, to create the computers to control the craft. You need a pretty massive team for this. So it's not just as simple as doing it. Um, Although I think some of his other patents are more simple.
So, final question of the night. What is the key takeaway from the previous data points, and how does 0 point energy relate?
Ooh, Scooby, you want to try and hit on this one?
That's a. I'd say the best way to understand all of this and to take away, we kind of just sat here and gave you a very outline of a very broad set of patents, and it is by no means easy to understand, and we don't expect you to even try to comprehend any of this information. What we do ask of you is just absorb it, take note of it, and if you do understand it, please try to apply it in any way, shape, or form to whatever venture you're doing or whatever system you are going for. As Salvatore Pais very much put this out here for, it is to help humanity, and we need to start taking the power back into our own hands and not relying everybody else to do it for us. So I would say the key takeaway of it, of all of this, all of these data points, would be to just have the knowing that there is something out there that is far beyond our our understanding. However, there is something very real and very tangible that we do understand, and everybody may not understand it fully. There are minds that can easily grasp this. Now, how does 0 point energy relate? Well, as Xenox was saying earlier, tapping into some of these generators, you're getting into what is seemingly endless energy, and to that degree, it is 0 point. I mean, it may not be at the calculations wise, but as far as powering any basic supplies or utilities, you're never going to know the difference. And I think that's the key point. You can live comfortably on something that is seemingly infinite.
Yeah, very well said, Scoop. Um, these are concepts that might be hard or impossible for you and I to understand, but to a lot of scientists out there, it's not that hard for them to understand. It's just a matter of them sitting down and doing the math, essentially putting it together. It's the hardest thing for them would be to undo the social conditioning that they've been through in their society and the universities and whatever. Um, and yeah, the craft does poke into the quantum field and make light of energy manipulation um, from the quantum, and that point would be 0 point energy, but it doesn't necessarily say anything beyond that. And I think it gets its energy from somewhere else, actually. Um, but yeah, as far as like the fusion and all that, Scuba said it perfectly. Um, but now space weather. Junk, are you awake?
Yeah, I'm here, and actually, coincidentally, today marks the deadline, the final deadline for Congress to be receiving the final UAP report. So it seems as if
What?
anti-gravitics
Synchronicity. Holy crap.
and it's solstice. So happy solstice to everyone.
Happy solstice. So, as we mentioned earlier in the evening, the Schumann was absolutely off the charts. And if you look at this, it has a very interesting DNA sequence. And our good friend Junk here and Quantum Light did some research on that. Would you like to share?
I actually like to give all the credit to my partner, Clara. She did a beautiful presentation, which you guys can find as one of our latest posts at the Quantum Light on Instagram. But essentially, if you zoom into the weave, man, how do I show you this? Okay, you see, Scuba, you see the first, if you go from the blackout break and you scroll, if you move over, yeah, like go to the left pattern. Yeah, those that resembles a vector equilibrium, which is some of the most high or multi-dimensional geometry that we can perceive in this plane. And it's fascinating because this pretty much ties in everything together as far as like transcendental light codes go. But yeah, this is on record the highest frequency that we've received thus far. The previous holder being 170 back in 2020. But this is blowing it out. And of course, this thing went viral everywhere on all socials. You saw people just speaking on this. And it wasn't just that they were speaking on it, the like ratio was absurd 50,000 likes here. It was just crazy. So what happened was, and we got to speaking on this earlier, but there was a collective resonance, a much needed synchronization of awareness into what matters and how we connect with the solar energies and our own consciousness. So I believe that these codes, or shall we say this anomaly, even though it's not, it's everything is intentional, happened for a reason. And this is something that, when I initially saw it, I immediately thought DNA weave and high vibrational codes, of which they are. But lots of downloads coming in through all sources, and I hope that you felt it too. This is actually one of the most significant events of 2023, let alone the past 3 years. So yeah, I'm grateful to be alive to see this, but we are edging along for 200 plus in the near future.
Thank you for that, Junk. And for your weekly sun report, we had ourselves an X-class solar flare. Solar flare. Is not expected to fully hit Earth, but it most likely will cause some solar storms. So expect some high activity in the.
Scuba, can you pull up the solar wind model so we can see where that's going to go?
Yeah, I gotta find it.
I don't know if it's on that page or if you have to type in
No, it's
solar
on
wind.
this page. I just gotta find the actual clickable for it. There's usually a clickable that you can look at. That's what it looks like. And then there we go. Real-time solar wind. No, that's not what I'm looking at. I'm sorry. I usually know what to look for. Is it Open Tracker? There it is. So yeah, this little yellow dot here is Earth, and this is the wave of the solar flare. So definitely going more towards Mars. So we could definitely see some increased activity over there. But yeah, very fascinating indeed. And as you can see, we're really starting to see some activity. This is, I would say, part of a ricochet of the wave. And you can see an energy buildup at the end there, and that'll be affecting Earth here in the coming days. So always progressing into the timeline of ascension, and the Earth and the our soul sun is actively giving us those codes. So we have one final thing before we end off the night. Junk, take it away.
Thank you kindly, Scuba. Well, this is a bittersweet moment. We are coming upon the conclusion of this epic saga of a mystery school that I've conducted for the past 3 months, entitled Know Thyself, Path of the Initiate. This was a very sacred and powerful manifestation that came to me to create something organic, create a ancient mystery school like the one you're in, where we gather like minds and like energy to conceptualize the many archetypes and themes of consciousness. And so from these, we are approaching our prelude, the final close of our prelude mystery schools with this Sunday. We're speaking on synchronicity. And I know we've all had experience with synchronicity. So if you want to dive deep into the actual metaphysics of synchronicity, why it happens, and how you can start to observe the messages for yourself, be sure to join us this Sunday, June 25th at 5 p.m. PST. Again, this is the final free remaining session before the official debut in August, which is going to be insane for anybody who wants to know about that, but you'll get more details in the near future. So if you want to come see what it's about and just get a little teaser of a little promo of what's going to happen, stop by. It's absolutely free. You sign up at bit.ly/Know Thyself Volume 3, and we will see you there for an excellent conversation alongside our very special guest speaker, the High Priestess. So I hope to see you all there, and it's going to be an amazing time. And thank you for everybody that has been involved with Know Thyself for these past 3 months. It has been an absolute adventure, and I can't wait to show you what I've been cooking up behind the scenes. Thank you, Scuba.
Of course, my man. Alrighty, guys. You have yourselves a wonderful rest of your night. Thank you so much for stopping by. We will see you next week for another topic, diving deep and expanding your minds and just trying to give you new concepts to live your everyday life. All right, everybody. Have a good night. Stay well. Have a wonderful rest of your week. And as always, keep on seeking.